Cinema is a technology that let us tell stories in a whole different way. Now we have all these technologies that let us tell other stories in other ways.
The Creators Project and Eyebeam brought the three of us together for the New Cinema Hackathon to experiment with new forms of cinematic storytelling and interactive visuals. Cinema really emerged out of physical environments where instead of sitting in a dark room and viewing a coherent narrative, it was really an embodied experience. It was used to create the illusion, for example, of going on a train ride. And new cinema, to me, in some ways felt a lot like a contemporary reemergence of that, where interactive artists and other practitioners have taken the image-making processes of movie making and embedded it into physical experiences. The piece presents a figure walking across a bridge over a seemingly short distance of water between two islands. And as the viewer takes a breath, the distant island recedes away from them, preventing the figure ever from getting to the other side of the water, unless the user can hold their breath longer than is actually possible. So the project uses a headset microphone that the viewer wears, brings the sound of their breath into pure data, which is a sound processing environment that generates the ambient kind of soundscape, as well as measuring the rate of their breath. That information is then passed over OSC messages into Unity, which is a 3D game engine and interactive platform in which that controls the walking of the figure and the expanding of the bridge and the animation of the additional planks into the bridge, as well as the appearance of the water and the movement of the islands apart.
All of us were kind of coming to this from an interest from a different perspective, and I was starting to think about this project. It was so much about water and breath in relationship to water. You know, you start noticing the moment you're in the water.
Well, it definitely came out of, the recent experience of Sandy, and it definitely also brought up how much we control and influence the greater environment around us. So this piece is kind of thinking about those effects and what's happening.
We decided to go with Unity and sort of creating a virtual world, because I've worked with Unity before and with character animation in Unity. I created scene and the character and programmed it to have this dynamic interaction.
My job emerged early on when we were talking about our ideas and talking about this idea of flooding and its connection to breathing and kind of rising water. And so that idea really connected to me with an idea I had just been learning about called seam carving. And seam carving is a technique for dynamically expanding and shrinking photographs, not just by cropping them or expanding them, but by adding content to them in a way that looks kind of seamless. So I worked on trying to use that technique in an interactive form to bring the expanding and shrinking water of our environment.
I had just learned how to create different kinds of sounds by putting band passes on noise generators, and which really kind of inspired me, because to think that this entire sound environment is white noise. Everything is just equal white snow that is filling up space entirely, and it's all the same. And that idea of the void again, in which our world kind of exists, and you create the environment by walking through it and creating different floods, different rains, different spaces even, because I learned that the difference of one bandpass filter over another is the difference between feeling like you're inside of a tea kettle or out by the side of the ocean, on a rainy day. And so that was a really kind of beautiful thing to play around with.
We went in wanting to have storytelling as an important aspect. That's what we thought of when we heard cinema. And we make interactive pieces, but we wanted to bring storytelling to it, and that was just very hard. In some ways, like the interactive technological context acted as this like acid that dissolves storytelling ideas you put into it. I think that really that cinema has kind of become, in addition to becoming a much more complicated beast, so economically and in the distribution medium in the industry, it's also become this aesthetic and this vocabulary that can now be used by anyone in almost any place. And so I'm really excited and interested to see those two things kind of crossbreed, to see the places where the other mediums where people are using cinematic vocabulary interact with the actual industry as it begins to be able to do new things. So that was also one of the things that made me excited about this event, was that it really explored some of that. You had visual effects artists who work on major motion pictures here side by side with interactive artists who use some of those same vocabularies in mobile applications. So I do think that's the future in at least one part of it.